Somehow Palpatine returned.
With more than a few videos hashtagging Star Wars, most of the things being offered next can't exactly be original. So consider this a valuable, pithy refresher. Though I haven't shared the list yet, the first point was already covered. Point 2 is about representation, and I also kind of covered this point when I brought up my daughter. Still, if you're new to this channel, and you probably are, here's my take on it. I recognize the purpose and utility of diversity and representation. In select applications, I can even appreciate the necessity of it. I also think that our culture has fetishized and commodified it, and that business interests signal it exploitatively as a sort of PR shield, and that media personalities use it vainly. When it comes to my entertainment, I prefer that representation be sincere and quiet, if it's to be of any good at all. And I know it when I see it, especially when I'm not made to see it. These days, if you want to stand out, try sitting down, because nobody's doing that, not when there's a camera around or a movie to be made. The exception to my relative indifference on diversity and casting is, of course, when a story is necessarily about racial and cultural distinctions. Basically, it depends. But I tend to be more interested in different types of people than different shades of skin. And if the film sucks, I'm not interested either way. So, don't cry for me, Argentina. The truth is, I already got my hero. And so did a slew of others, back in the 1970s and 80s no less. To repeat a message I made in my Surfacity video, it didn't matter that Luke Skywalker didn't look like me. But since everyone now needs to be seen, let me ask, do you want to be represented in a film that's actually good? Or in a film satisfied with making you feel good? Because it seems really hard to get both, when appeasing racial and gender considerations are made to be such important parts of the process. And it's the worst kind of fan service. Because it's not really for fans. It's more for sycophants themselves. Remember, first you get the basic story right, then you tend to the demographics. That is, if you want it to go beyond Surfacity. If we concede that the sequels weren't as good as the originals, who did the sequels fail most spectacularly? The answer is that it failed the audience Disney was focused on highlighting. Now, again, this is no big deal to me. Remember, I got my Star Wars. But those who value external factors more than I do, you all didn't. You've been cheated. If you cared about it and are honest, you're still waiting on a great epic Star Wars film that features you. At best, you got a consolation prize. And old school Star Wars fans didn't do that. Disney did.
Failed they have. It out for the whole world to see they did.
Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, even Harrison Ford were not household names when Star Wars debuted. And with exception to, perhaps, Harrison, these were the roles that would turn out to be their most definitive and iconic. And it's only because Star Wars and the 80 sequels made them so. And while the sequels obviously did the old guard wrong, did them dirty, it was the new guard that really got shafted by the sequels, artistically speaking. Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Adam Driver have since showed themselves to be capable performers. None of them can be blamed for the shortcomings of the sequel scripts. They did the best they could with the plot they were given, and what they were given was disjointed and preposterous. Again, the proof of this claim are the films themselves. In terms of damage, the fourth and final sin of the sequels is the second worst offender, behind reason number 1. This has been stated by many all over the internet, and it's correct, and still worth repeating. The sequels missed the one and only chance to use the original cast in an effective, purposeful way. And because the sequel plots were sloppy, it's unlikely it would have mattered anyway. Even if The Force Awakens had managed an effective fan service reunion, What would it have mattered as part of a subpar film or films? The whole purpose and impetus for a reunion existed because the source material created a genuine demand for it, and more stories like it. The original Star Wars were excellent entertainment, and were the only reason the sequels were worth considering in the first place. They were so good that people kept coming back in search of a magic that evaporated in 1983. And going forward, any substantive, emotional momentum for future Star Wars films will be pinned on the devotion created by George Lucas's 3 original scripts. Any other buzz or income will most certainly be the result of expensive marketing, but not its own magic. Had the Star Wars sequels existed without episodes 1 through 6, and especially 4 through 6, they would have had a much tougher time justifying their own follow-ups or achieving the financial success that they did. Much like the characters of their films, the sequels thrived off of the stolen valor of their predecessors. In terms of artistic merit, the sequels were a hollow victory and were propped up by a foundation created by George Lucas a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. If Kathleen Kennedy doesn't deserve exclusive credit for the past projects she's been associated with, many of which were excellent, then she certainly doesn't deserve exclusive blame either. This was not an indie film. She may have been the tip of the spear, but she wasn't the spear itself. Visionary work usually has a singular point of origin, but clusterfucks like the Star Wars sequels, that takes teamwork.
There must be someone! Oh, stop that! Stop that! Stop it! Stop it!
So there's blame to go around. And because the expectations bar was set so high, I'd argue that Kennedy faced a higher one than Lucas himself. Because Star Wars was once new and free of the kind of expectations it has now, 1977 might have granted George Lucas more latitude than he would ever enjoy again. And by the time of the production for the prequels, it was Lucas himself feeling the increased weight of his previous accomplishments. Years later, and because the prequels were not well received, Disney was under pressure and emboldened to not disappoint fans again. They were set up and empowered to minimize Lucas's input, either for the fans or for themselves. And probably both. So out of respect to people facing a monumental challenge, despite the fact that I really, really dislike the sequels and what they did, the enormity of the pressure Kennedy and company faced needs to be acknowledged if we're to fully appreciate the scale of the failure itself. In soft defense of Kennedy in particular, the fact is we don't really know the specific extent of her creative influence, beyond hiring and firing, and some last-minute audibles that she was reported to have made during a few projects. As a producer, of course, she deserves a lion's share of singular blame. But I won't pretend to have insider info or to know precisely how much of this disaster has her fingerprints on it, especially considering the culture we're all a part of, either reluctantly or enthusiastically. This lets no one associated with the sequels off the hook, and Disney literally owns this cinematic mess. It's their own fault. Kennedy and Disney, through their processes and preferences, made a difficult enough task damn near impossible. Despite that, for at least 2 of the 3 sequels, the ends were, in the short term, justified by the green.
It's a very big universe I've created, and there's a lot of stories that are sitting in there.
The main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them.
Star Wars, as conceived by George Lucas, arrived as a byproduct of personal inspiration over external considerations, including money. I'm not suggesting he wasn't financially motivated, but he certainly seemed to favor the integrity of the story, at least a bit, over sales. That's how I saw it, anyway.
Action figures each sold separately.
So attempts made to recapture the Star Wars magic without its magician, and under different circumstances, and with hands now self-tied by ideology, was not likely to happen. Any company too concerned with demographic and social considerations can't create a story that's not preemptively confined and distracted by those very things. Things which, in and of themselves, can be fine, provided they are the well-considered points of the story itself. Great films, certainly, can be made with consideration to social concerns. But if you're trying to expand on a previous IP where such considerations were incidental, and really were never a problem in the first place, then your execution better be very good. Because this whole storytelling thing, that's hard enough on its own.
I have as much experience in the Congress as Jack Kennedy did when he sought the presidency.
Senator Benson?
Senator, I served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
One more thing in a sort of final defense of Kathleen Kennedy, and even Disney. And it's admittedly a kind of backhanded defense. These folks simply couldn't live up to George. But even George couldn't live up to George. And the prequels kind of showed it. But while the prequels feature several failures of execution, where they fail in service of a good story. They weren't the fundamental failures of planning and story structure that the sequels were. More importantly, they didn't retcon Star Wars lore. Even if you disliked the introduction of the midichlorians, it did not change the basic meaning of episodes 4 through 6. Wherever the prequels may have failed, at least their failures didn't bleed into the originals.
Somehow Palpatine returned.